Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack one of the most dramatic, epic, and honestly truly foundational events preserved in ancient history. We are looking at the Dasharajnya Yuddha, much better known as the Battle of the Ten Kings. Now this is a story etched right into the ancient texts of the Rigveda, mostly in Mandala 7, and it's a tale of incredible strategy, intense tribal rivalry, and a conflict that quite literally shaped the future of an entire civilization. To really get a feel for this, I want you to picture the vast, fertile plains of the Punjab. The year? Somewhere right around 1400 to 1300 BCE. The sun is just blazing overhead, beating down on this harsh landscape of reeds and thorny bushes. And out in the distance, massive dust clouds are rising up. Thousands of warriors from all across the northwest are converging. You can almost feel that oppressive heat and the mounting tension in the air. We aren't just talking about some vague myth here. We're looking at an imminent clash of ancient titans that was as visceral and real as the ground they stood on. So, here's how this whole epic narrative plays out chronologically. We start right in the thick of the early Vedic age, around 1400 BCE. Then, we move into those incredibly tense days right before the battle, filled with rival rituals and hymns. That builds straight into a stunning climax, where the muddy waters of the river itself are unleashed. And finally, we end up in the post-battle aftermath, where the Bharata tribe consolidates their power over the whole region. Now, you might be wondering where exactly this all went down. Well, a key player in this story isn't actually a person at all. It's geography. This clash happens right on the banks of the Parshni River. And while Parshni might sound, incredibly ancient and mythical to us now, it's a very real place. It's actually the ancient name for the modern-day Ravi River, which flows right through the Punjab region today. As you'll see, this strong, muddy river wasn't just some scenic backdrop. It was absolutely crucial. It became the ultimate strategic element, both the battlefield and, ultimately, a weapon.
Part 1. The Factions, a Clash of Ancient Kings. Let's take a look at the intense rivalry that defines this whole war.
Now, what's really interesting about this setup is how staggering the contrast is between the two sides. On one hand, you have King Sudas. He's this Bharata king, a descendant of the Peru, leading a highly disciplined, battle-hardened force of Tritsu warriors, all guided by his chief priest, Vasishta. But opposing him, the 10 Kings. This is a massive, incredibly diverse, sprawling tribal confederacy that massively outnumbers Sudas's men. And here is where the ancient drama gets really good. This huge alliance is being guided by a rival sage named Vishwamitra. Get this, Vishwamitra was actually Sudas's former priest. So yeah, talk about a bitter breakup turning into a massive geopolitical conflict. It's a single, unified command going up against an absolutely overwhelming coalition. Let's look a little closer at King Sudas himself. The source material paints this amazingly vivid, sensory picture of him. Imagine this formidable leader standing tall in a chariot that is literally gleaming with gold accents. He's clad in heavy bronze armor draped with tiger skins. Surrounding his chariot are his absolute most elite troops, these white-robed warriors with intricately braided hair. These are men hardened from previous conquests across the Bias and Sutlej rivers. And as they brace for the onslaught, they're fiercely chanting hymns, invoking the gods Indra and Varuna. They are disciplined, laser-focused, and ready to fight for their supremacy. But facing him is an absolute wall of enemies. The Confederacy includes some major tribal powerhouses of the time. The Peru, Yadu, Trivasa, Anu, Druhu, Alina, Paktha, Balanas, Shiva, and the Vishanan. Just hearing that list, the sheer scale of that alliance is terrifying. Sudas wasn't just fighting a disgruntled neighbor, he was facing a united front of the entire Northwest. It was a coalition desperately throwing everything they had at halting his expanding dominance.
Part 2. The Clash and the River's Wrath. Let's see how the chaos on the battlefield actually unfolds.
So the tension that had been building for days finally snaps. The air out there is thick with the smell of sweat, wood smoke, and burning ghee from the priests' sacrificial fires. And then, the battlefield just erupts. The Confederacy presses hard, really leaning into their massive numerical advantage. Chariots thunder across the uneven plains. Swarms of arrows fly, literally darkening the blazing sky above them. The air is completely split by deafening battle cries, the frantic neighing of horses, and that brutal, rhythmic clash of bronze striking bronze. The sheer numbers of the 10 kings are pushing Sudas and his disciplined warriors right to the absolute brink. In fact, the primary source, the Rigveda, describes Sudas's dire situation with this exact chilling phrase: "The enemy compassed him about." It's a terrifying, totally suffocating image, because despite all his discipline, despite the gold-gleaming chariot and the heavy bronze armor, Sudas is trapped. He is completely surrounded by a sea of enemies, and honestly, the situation looks totally hopeless. Let's move to the climax and see how this builds, because right here is where the environment becomes the ultimate weapon. See, the enemy had actually tried to use the river against Sudas first. They built embankments, basically damming the river to control the waters, maybe trying to flood out his camp. But in a brilliant, desperate countermove, the Bharatas purposefully breached those very embankments. Suddenly, massive, surging floodwaters are unleashed. The muddy river just crashes into the Confederate army, creating this chaotic rout of overturned chariots and drowning warriors. Under the sheer, unstoppable force of that river, the massive alliance completely breaks. The human cost of this watery destruction, though, was staggering. The source suggests that over 6,000 warriors from the Confederacy fell or were swept away in the chaos. To put that into perspective, losing that many men in a single ancient skirmish is absolutely massive. It's a really somber, brutal reminder of the raw reality of ancient tribal warfare. This wasn't just a strategic retreat. It was a devastating, catastrophic loss of life in a matter of mere hours. Part 3. Forging an enduring legacy. Let's zoom out from the mud and blood of the battlefield to see what happens next. The immediate post-battle scene is one of ultimate triumph for the Bharatas. Just imagine the campfires lighting up the night sky. King Sudas, victorious against literally impossible odds, offers rich gifts of cows, horses, and gold to his priest, Basista. Bards are singing these epic songs of Indra's thunderbolts and the river's wrath, and to firmly cement his absolute supremacy, Sudas performs a grand Ashwamedha, the incredibly elaborate horse sacrifice. This isn't just a victory party, it is a profound cultural statement of his undisputed dominance over the entire regions. And the long-term impacts of this single victory are massive. It completely consolidates Bharata power, allowing them to settle down, intermarry, and expand. It literally paves the way for the later Kuru polity. So why does this matter to us today? Because this specific event drove the cultural synthesis of Vedic India. The defeated tribes either assimilated or dispersed, and through this violent conflict, a new, unified identity, territory, and dharma were forged. Basically, it laid the absolute bedrock for Indian civilization as we know it today. Which brings us to a final, incredibly provocative thought. Because this event captures the dynamic, violent forging of the early Vedic age so perfectly, many scholars ask, is this the true historical nucleus of the legendary Mahabharata? Could this real, muddy, bloody clash of ancient kings be the foundational seed that was mythologized over centuries into India's greatest epic war? It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Just how much of our greatest legends are simply echoes of real events that happened thousands of years ago. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it sparked your curiosity to look even deeper into our ancient past.